Today on Locked On Canadiens, people are starting to doubt the coaching. Let's talk about that here on Locked On Canadiens.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 937. As you know, we are your team every day here, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And my name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. And I'm joined, as always, by Scott Matla of Habs Eyes on the Prize. Scott, how are you doing on this fine Thursday evening as we get ready to do our mailbag episode?
I'm doing all right. The biggest thing for me is this first 2 weeks of the Habs schedule is bull crap, to be quite honest with you, in that they spread the games out so much that we've only gotten to do a handful of actual game stuff with everybody. And then next week, it's just, we're going to beat you over the head with game content all of a sudden, that it's like, I would have liked a game tonight, to talk about going into the weekend, but well, I think I'm on Game Over on Saturday. I'm not 100% sure. I should probably confirm
Oh,
that
wait, I
before
think
I...
I'm on Game Over on Saturday, too. Am
Andrew, if
I?
you're listening to this, please tell us if we're on Game Over on Saturday or not.
Oh, I think I'm not. I think I said no. I can't remember. All
Andrew, if
right.
you're listening to this, tell me if I'm on Game Over on Saturday or
Yes.
not.
Just in case you're listening to this, at least one of us will be on Game Over, and possibly both of us will be on Game Over this Saturday night. As you can tell, we all have it together. As you guys know, we've had a lot of job changes recently, and I've had some health issues. So our schedule's a little bit up in the air, but I believe we did promise, one of us promised Andrew we would be on Game Over. Let's get into our mailbag though, because I wanted to talk about a mailbag question that we got that was actually the opposite of how I tagged this episode. Um, so this is from our good friend Doghouse, and the mailbag question is: theoretically, and this is a huge if, it's even written in all caps, if the Habs sneak into the playoffs this season, is Martin St. Louis in the conversation for the Jack Adams Trophy? He doesn't necessarily win it, but he is in the conversation, or is he in the conversation? So I wanted to pair this because there's been a couple comments lately about people kind of doubting the Martin St. Louis experiment, saying that he's a great motivator, he's a great speaker, he's a great personality, but do we know if tactically he is really a sound coach? And actually, like, the thing is, like, we don't have anything to compare it to, right? Like, he was so inexperienced. This is literally his first head coaching job that is like in a professional league at all. So I really wanted to bring this up and kind of talk about the, like, both arguments for what's going on. Like, if the Canadiens sneak into the playoffs this year, for sure, he's not just in the conversation, he's a finalist.
Yeah, I think that because the Jack Adams is always the, wow, you did way better than we expected award. Unless you're like so far ahead, like the Bruins were last year, that it's like, here you go. The Canadiens making the playoffs this year definitely qualifies in that regard for, wow, we thought you were going to be terrible. Here you go. Here's your trophy. And it's a death kiss for anyone's career. But the thing about Martin St. Louis this year, and it was Wave Intel, Jason, who we've had on this show before, that he posted something on Twitter that I thought was interesting. At 5-on-5 this season, the Canadiens have allowed 1 goal. When they are playing at even strength during this season, they have been playing very well. Possession numbers are a little bit wonky, but we know that they are still not a great team, and they are a team that has now lost one of their best possession players in Kirby Dach for this season here. They're getting sunk by just terrible special teams. Penalty kills, not great. Power play is somehow being outscored by other teams' penalty kills. That's a problem. But I look at it, they are building a strong base at 5-on-5 and are outscoring opponents in the main state that games are played. That is a huge net positive for this team. It's just now they have to. This is not a negotiable thing here. This is get this sorted out immediately because it's a problem. If the power play was functioning at just below league average, the Canadiens might actually be 3-0 going into this game against Washington. Maybe. But I think that there's still a lot Martin St. Louis is learning through, and I think some of it is, are the assistant coaches doing the job the way we need them to? I don't know what Alex Burrows does on this team because Martin St. Louis is the one helping to coach a power play that is not functioning. I believe Trevor Letowski is working in there, and obviously, Stefan Robida is coaching the defense here. If they can, everyone needs to pick it up a little bit in terms of how they're working on special teams here. Penalty kill and power play, obviously, those are the only special teams, but I've been impressed with what they can do at 5-on-5. They got to work on the discipline, and they can build from there. I think Martin St. Louis done a good job, and motivating is a big part of that, especially when your team is going to be bad. Now it's, can he learn from the mistakes that he's making right now that he doesn't have any frame of reference for as an NHL head coach until this point?
And I was on mute, obviously, as I always am. But okay, so here's where I kind of stand on all of this, is that it's the same thing as the players, right? Like last year at the beginning of the year, I said that I knew that the season was going to be tough, and I knew that the season, the Habs weren't going to be world beaters. We didn't expect the injuries that we got over the course of the season, but I did expect it to be a bad season. But what I was watching for is if their habits got better, if their behaviors got better, if their skills were improved, if they took strides forward. And unfortunately for a lot of the players, they got injured, so we couldn't know. But that's the same thing that I'm watching for right now. Like, we know there are glaring holes that are about personnel, and then there are glaring holes about tactics, just like we talked about. Like, something needs to be done, right? So if I'm looking at this team, like, 30 or 40 games from now, and it's still an abject disaster in terms of the special teams, like, there's a lot of questions to be asked. If the if the defenseman, like, you're not going to turn them into, like a Victor Hedman overnight. That's not happening. But if the defensemen are still playing a very sloppy and immature game, then I'm going to have concerns. You know what I mean? Like, and I know some people have kind of pointed out that, like, the Habs aren't really generating all that much offense. But again, it's been what, 3 games? It's literally been 3 games, right? Like, the goals will come. I'm just worried about the fact that in all 3 games, like, we saw some lapses on all fronts that I just mentioned. So it's really, like, for me, I want to see improvement. If obviously, if the Canadiens sneak into the playoffs, you have to include Martin St. Louis into the conversation. And I haven't written him off yet at all.
No, because like you said, we are 3 games into this season, coming off of back-to-back years where they were the most injured team in hockey. You're asking Sisyphus to be like, well, just push the boulder over the hill. Like, that's how this works so easily. I think that there is a lot of promise there. It is just, can this coaching staff adapt and learn? And I think that I do believe in this team there. I really do. If they can fix some of the bad habits around this team right now, I'm not saying they're going to be great. I would love it if this team somehow shocked everybody and made the playoffs. The Atlantic is so deep. I don't know if they will do that, mind you. But like you said, if they make the playoffs, if they are even sniffing the playoffs when the season ends, you got to figure there's going to be Jack Adams votes in there for him. Because nobody, even the most stalwart Habs fans, I don't think expected this season to be like, wow, sniffing the playoff. No, absolutely not at that point. And I'm rooting for Martin St. Louis to get success out of this, because he's a guy who came out of nowhere, a non-traditional coach, as non-traditional as you can get in the NHL, coming in and helping restore the Canadiens. Like, come on, what's not to love about that? And I don't plan on giving up the faith in this coaching staff yet. I am frustrated, and if the special teams don't improve, then you start making phone calls. But we're 3 games in, and they just lost their second line center, and they're still trying to figure out defensive pairs and line shuffling now. Because of that, it's too early to just smash the eject button and let the plane fall into the sea at this point.
Exactly. So at the same time, I think, let's give it 30 games. Let's give it 25 to 30 games before we start calling a trend or anything like that. Also, let's hope there aren't any more injuries. In the meantime, we are going to get into some more mailbag questions, including keeping the faith in the Habs. And that's all coming up in just one moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by Birddogs, and I have to tell you about Birddogs because guess what? They are the most comfortable, the most stylish shorts or pants that you could possibly wear. They look great for going out, but they're so comfy that you could do anything like gardening, working out, helping somebody move, all of that kind of stuff. We all got Birddogs pants, we all got Birddog shorts, and I gotta say I'm really salty. I kept the hat, I kept the water bottle, I kept the coffee cup. I couldn't get the pants and I'm so jealous, but I did give them to my brother-in-law and he absolutely adores them. They are literally, the fit is so great. The pockets, they're so convenient. Birddogs are truly, truly the most comfortable, most fun, stylish pairs of pants that you will ever get. And if you want to try Birddogs, which you should, you absolutely, absolutely should, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL, or you can enter promo code LockedOnNHL at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. So Scott, let's talk about some more mailbag questions. I wanted to talk about one that wasn't framed as a mailbag question, but I did want to open it up to the group. So our friend Ryan B on Twitter mentioned that they would be in town going to a Laval Rocket game. They were very excited about that, and they wanted to know if there were any tips for first timers heading to Laval. The one thing that I did say, and I will stand by this: if you're ever visiting and you want to go to a Rocket game, do not drive there. Take the metro. You get there, it's like a short walk from the metro, and it's super, super convenient, but parking is absolutely impossible. You'd think Laval's a suburb, there's parking everywhere. No, absolutely not. Do not do the same mistake that I've done like 3 or 4 times. Just don't. Take the metro. The other thing that you need to know is you shouldn't get a return ticket because a ticket from Montreal to Laval and a ticket from Laval to Montreal are 2 different prices and 2 different tickets. So get one way, and then like when you're on your way back, get your one-way ticket back into Montreal. This is assuming you are staying in Montreal. And the other thing too is that the food at Place Belle is pretty good. There's a couple of restaurants around Place Belle that you could go have a bite before the game, but in general, like that whole area is not super. It's like there's a strip mall like a short walk away. There's I believe there's a university campus there or something, a college there. There's like construction, there's like condo buildings. It's not like it's like half developed but not fully developed. But either way, there's not a whole lot going on there other than the Rocket game. So just plan to eat at the game. They've got great food. And it's a good time. It's a really good time. I've done it a few times. I absolutely love it, but just don't drive to the game. It's such a mess.
The only 2 things I can mention otherwise is Place Belle is freezing on the inside. Even in the press box, it is extremely cold there. So you will, depending on how much you get into the game, you'll warm up a little bit, but wear something under your jersey, sweatshirt, whatever that you were wearing there, because you will get cold. And also the goal horn is loud. And I don't just mean like regular NHL loud. I mean next level, and they blare it at the beginning of the game, the end of the game, go obviously during goals and everything. It's loud. Be prepared. There's always a band or someone playing during the intermissions, games, and everything. There's a lot going on there, and it's a loud building. It's usually they draw a pretty good crowd. Last night they had 6,700 people there on just a random Wednesday in October for the Rocket. I can't say too much else because I actually haven't had a chance to go to Place Belle thanks to COVID and just work travel and everything else. It is on my list to hopefully get there at some point this season, and I can give you a much more detailed answer when I get to finally experience that for myself here.
So I also wanted to open it up to the listeners. Those of you who go to the Rocket games, I go like maybe 4 or 5 times a year, like maybe like depending on the year. Obviously, COVID year I didn't do anything because there weren't any games, or we couldn't go to the games. But in the last couple of years, I've tried very hard to go to at least 5 games, getting there. But I thought that was a really great it was a great question. It was not meant for the mailbag. It was just more asking us for tips. But I wanted to open it up to the crowd. Okay, our good friend Goalie Droid is back. Speaking of people, I actually like hung out with Goalie Droid at an intermission at a Laval Rocket game. If you were Martin St. Louis, what would you offer the Habs to stop taking penalties?
Puppies.
I would threaten them.
Well, he should just go in the locker room, and for like every penalty, he just aggressively flexes his quads and like intimidates the team is what he should do. The biggest thing is that it's like penalties are going to happen. They are a fact of matter in hockey. No matter what, even the best teams will take penalties, depending on who you ask anyways. So sorry, Toronto fans. Yes, everybody takes penalties, even you. And I'm just kind of wondering if it's like, hey, if you get through games without taking penalties, you don't have to do the conditioning, or there's, a reward for like one of the coffee shops or like a steakhouse or something like that, that, hey, whoever ends this week with the least amount of penalty minutes that is playing games, you get dinner on us at, I actually don't know a famous steakhouse in Montreal because I don't know if Moish is closed or not. So like,
They reopened. They closed at their original location. They reopened somewhere else. There's also, I believe, Cote Cheval is still open. That's a pretty expensive steakhouse. And for I think the Habs players really like going to this place called I never know if it's Beatrice or Beatrice, but either way, it's way out of my price range. But they all love going there. Like if you see like if they get asked like what's your favorite restaurant, that's always on the list. But I think it's because they specifically cater really well to Habs players and their spouses. So like that's that's one that comes up a lot. I have a somewhat completely unrelated question. That this is my mailbag question now to you, because for the last week or so, one of my best friends and I have been making lots of friendship bracelets for Taylor Swift, for the Taylor Swift movie. So for those of you who don't know, Taylor Swift fans have been trading friendship bracelets at her concerts. But also making friendship bracelets, like all the beading and stuff, is really relaxing. So we've been doing that as like a de-stressor, and like crafts and stuff is fun. If the Habs were to give each other friendship bracelets, Scott, what would they say on them?
it will, like Nick Suzuki's would just say like, Captain Suzy on it, because that's what they call him, Suzy on there. Cole would just be Cole because they're so uncreative. They just call him Cole or Colesy, I think. Like it, I'm curious like what they would put on like Josh Anderson's, because because hockey nicknames are so boring that
They're
it's
so stupid.
Andy.
But they
It's
would put Power Horse on there, I think.
I think Power Horse would go on there, but like they call him
Jack
Andy or
Eye.
they call him Savvy. I'm I'm I- I'm glad you mentioned Jack Eye too, just because this is a tangent aside there. They should put the sheriff on there, because that's what he's asked to, kind of go by as his nickname. Because he mentioned today, and I believe I don't have the source directly in front of me, but he's like, I don't know, I'm not crazy about the Wi-Fi nickname anymore at this point. And I can understand why, in that it might feel a little bit rough that people might, it seems like they're making fun of how your last name is spelled kind of thing. And I stick with calling him the sheriff. So I would put that one on there. Pez, his bracelet should just be mimicking the Italian flag all the way around. Just no words on there, or it'll just say Pez, and then it's just all Italian flag colors, like all the way around on that. It's too perfect not to. And then Samuel Montembeau's can be like bright cherub colors and such, because he's a mid-20s like cherub faced baby somehow, and I think that's adorable.
Yes. And I feel like David Savard would spend the most time trying to think of what goes on what bracelet, and he's going to be really thoughtful about giving each person something that like matches their personality, or like that means something to him about them. Like I just that's the impression I get of who David Savard is. And then Jake
Mike
Allen would
Mathis,
probably say
Mike Matheson and his wife would probably do a really good job at this too. Emily
yeah.
would probably do a phenomenal job at doing something like this.
Yes, 100%. And Jake Allen would have a lot of like borderline quotes that you say on TV, but then uh, everybody makes a meme out of it. But
You
yeah,
can't put piss and vinegar in your pants on a friendship bracelet. It's too long and it's kind of weird. If someone looks at your bracelet and that just and goes, "That's a piss and vinegar on it," that's weird as hell. Like, I don't know how Swifties would react to that.
I also did not remember what he said, so thank you for reminding me, Scott. I just remember it was like vaguely off the board.
I don't even think vaguely is like it was like out of pocket as hell, and it's still. I
It's so
want to
funny.
find the tweet because I want to read the replies to that again because I have never laughed so hard in my entire life.
That's what we can do. Like when you eat the hot sauce thing, we can do the quote tweets of that quote.
Okay.
Speaking of, we
Okay.
have live episodes, but I do have some travel coming up, so we haven't finalized the dates for that yet. Once we figure all that out, we'll let you know the exact dates for each live episode. There's one about visiting Montreal. There's one about Scott eating something disgusting, or the hot ones. I feel like people want him to do the hot ones again, as does his partner. So I feel like we're leaning heavily towards hot ones. But he can recite the quote tweets, and then I have one with my friend Megan, who we will be talking about hot players, and that one we want. Yeah, no, it's literally going to be a live episode all about players and hotness, but it's going to be for charity. We would like a charitable cause. We would like to raise money in some way or help, promote a charitable cause for that. So once we figure that out, just need to figure out my travel dates when Scott's going to be available. He doesn't have to be here for the hot players. um that's feels like more of a Laura thing. And then we will get back to you on those dates. In the meantime, we've got a couple more mailbag questions coming up, and if you want to send us mailbag questions, don't forget we're at lockedoncanadians@gmail.com, or you can leave them in the YouTube comments and just put mailbag episode. You can also tweet or DM us on Twitter for them, but the jury's out as to whether or not we'll actually get those notifications. So we will see. In the meantime, we are about to switch over to the last segment, so the questions might go a little bit more off the rails. I think I took it off the rails with the friendship bracelets, but a little bit more, and that's coming up in just one moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Even though the Habs have not been winning as much as we like, you can still win 100 times your money if you play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. There are all kinds of possible scenarios for this season, but if you want to have a chance at winning big, you really need to play daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you need to do is pick more or less on stats for NHL stars. Choose stats like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more. You heard me, Habs fans, 100 times the payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks right so you could win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Okay, so we had a question. It wasn't really a question. It was more of a correspondence from our good friend Doghouse, and he had previously guessed some potential guests that we could have for our 1000th episode. Here's his second batch of guesses: Martin St. Louis, Nick Suzuki, Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes, Jeff Molson, Serge Savard, Mitch Melnick, Elliot Price, a Locked On Canadiens episode of Gallo versus Campbell. So that's a TS, like the last few are TSN 690, obviously, related. There was like our dream guest is actually one that David mentioned in his previous series of guesses. Scott, you weren't there for that mailbag episode, but you're still missing our other dream guest that nobody has guessed so far about who we're trying to get for our rapidly approaching 1000th episode.
Jesus. I would say
I
we're what, 2 months away from
Yeah, I really hope it's not on that episode that I'm not here. I have more travel coming up in January. Our lives are a mess. Anyway, back to the mailbag questions. We're talking about a bunch of stuff. One of them was not necessarily a mailbag question, but I did kind of bring this up. How many serious injuries has Kirby Dach had in his brief hockey career? Is he susceptible to injury? So, Scott, you had a couple of things to say about that in our last episode, or not last episode, the previous one.
The previous one we did
Thoughts?
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is, one of them was his wrist got snapped because someone cross-checked him. Like, and this was a freak accident that, like, it's not like, oh, it's a muscle injury. Like, ligaments tear and snap sometimes because hockey is a game played on knife shoes. And sometimes you just twist a little bit of the wrong way and it's all over. We've seen people get folded in half and it's like, oh, well, they're broken in half now. They're never going to play hockey again. And they're back out there for the next period. Innocuous things can happen. I don't think he's injury prone so much as someone has put a curse on him, in that his first year where he missed that entire year was because someone came in and over his wrist. And I remember watching this game because you could hear the crack audibly. And I thought it was the stick, and it turns out it was his wrist. It's gross. And I don't think he's injury prone. I think he's just insanely unlucky.
I think we just need to keep other people away from him as well.
Yeah.
Just like,
well,
don't let anyone near him.
I mean, we can staple Arbor to him, I guess, and just, he can be like a punchy backpack. Anytime someone gets near Kirby Dach, he can just start like punching and whacking at them, and it works.
Here's one. How many block shots do you think David Savard will have at the end of the season? This is also from Doghouse. It's actually just an observation, but that's a good question. How many block shots do you think David Savard will have at the end of this season?
I'm looking something up on Hockey Reference right now because I want to actually check how many. So last year he had 126. He had 127 the year before that. He has 7 in 3 games so far. Oh, he had 176 last year. I can't read. Never mind. I say that he will end the year with 185 block shots.
That's a good one. I think that's a good guess. I was going to say it could reach to 200 depending on how many more people get injured. And then we've got a question from Paul K. All right. First, thank you for answering my question about the whole moving Lane Hudson to a forward role. Lane Futson.
Lane Futson.
And then Lane Gutson when he plays goal. I really think it would be a smart choice. But today's question is, why is everyone getting so worried about a couple of injuries at this point when just a few games ago we had more D-men and forwards than we knew what to do with? There are many that can step in my opinion, and will be just as good as everyone else. Praise them to be in preseason. Thanks for your input. P.S. Would like to hear Scott's opinion sometime, as he was on time off on my first question. So this has been a common refrain, Scott, is people don't like when we do the mailbag alone. They want us to have the mailbag together. Unfortunately, Scott is going to be away for the next mailbag, but I won't be doing it alone. I have a surprise guest for that one. It's after the Columbus Blue Jackets game.
So here's the thing. The reason people are panicking about injuries, because all we've seen is nothing but injuries for the last 2 years.
It's recency bias.
Everyone's a little gun shy. Everyone's got a little bit of injury PTSD. And because it's involving prominent players again, it's not hard to be a little bit like on edge about it. And that the sky is not falling, but it sure sucks. And that's just part of it. I don't want to like say the it's over, that they're never coming back. Nothing good will happen this year. But those 2 injuries back to back to start the year, plus what happened to Reinbacher and Heineman, etc., it's just so reminiscent of everything else that's happened that it's a tough thing to stomach a little bit.
I think so. But I really do think it's because we're so paranoid about how things have gone in the last couple of years. Okay, so I have another question, and I'm going to read this whole email because I thought it was really sweet. And this is from, you'll find out in a second. This is the second time I sent a question to you. I really appreciate your thoughtful response to my first question. In your response, you differentiated me from Richard the Architect. Also, Richard the Architect, hi, how are you? Where have you been? If you so desire, you can refer to me as Richard the Pastor, which leads me to my question. For the past 30 years, I've been praying to God for God to bring the Stanley Cup back to Montreal. He's not answered my prayers yet, and I'm not too hopeful for 2024. After 30 years of praying, do you think I should forsake my faith and embrace nihilism, or hold on to my faith and keep on praying? Your answer will determine my future. No pressure. And this is from Richard the pastor. All right.
So here's the thing here is that deep down, I want to bring this all in here. For those of us who are veterans of Twitter, understand where I'm going with this in a moment here, is that deep down, hockey doesn't matter. Nothing matters. We will all return to the dust whence we came when the universe was created by the Big Bang. Nothing matters. Embrace whatever makes you happy right now. Eat at Arby's.
All right. I have a little bit more of a nuanced take on this. Is that God will make it happen when the time is right. So I still have faith that we are all, you, Scott, me, and Richard the pastor, we're going to see a Stanley Cup come back to Montreal in our lifetimes. And I really hope I didn't jinx that. Finally, we have our nemesis question, which is, in this case, it's like a great question, Scott. It's a fantastic question. What old rich person type of decoration piece would you most like to have? I'm talking stuff like a hand-carved chess set that's never used, a giant globe, an oversized mahogany desk.
I would love. I want a large maple desk with keys that lock everything that is in my study, the kind of study that has a giant painting of some dude who vaguely looks like another dude that you go, ah, yes. And you look at it over the fireplace. And then next to the fireplace is your globe. But psych, it's not a globe. It's a whiskey shelf. And then inside there, and then you go to your desk, which is for some reason 12 feet wide with keys for all the drawers that you open up. And there's just one little pamphlet with a book in there that has all of your money and affairs listed in there. So when people come in and you can be standing, just menacingly behind your desk with the chair behind you and a big, just wide window behind you. I want one of those cartoony villain desks to have, because that way, when everything goes south and I got to flip it over because my enemies have found me, it looks that much more impressive. And then also I want just like a giant mounted like bison head, because why not? It's a study. I'm realizing I'm just describing like Clayton from Tarzan the movies, but that's fine. It doesn't matter.
Mine is an antique trunk, like those like cedar chest looking trunk things, like I guess a steamship trunk or whatever, but like an antique, literally like a trunk, and I want it in the middle of my living room. I would use it as a coffee table, and it would be like not the cheap imitation ones that you see at like Pier 1 or whatever. I don't even know if Pier 1 still exists, but like literally it would be one of those antique ones that belong to somebody rich and important in the past. That's actually like, it's not even an old rich person dream of mine. Mine is literally, that's something that I want in my life one day. And that's it. So if you ever have mailbag questions, you can send them to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. You can leave them in the YouTube comments. Just put mailbag at the beginning of the episode, so we know that you want us to bring it up on our Fridays. Make sure you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Also, please tell your friends about it. In the meantime, as you know, you can find us on all social media. Scott is at Scott Metla. I'm at The Active Stick. And then on formerly Twitter, we're at LO_Canadiens. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you all on Monday.